Okay, hello folks, and welcome to the 8:30 live, or whatever time it is. I think it's 9:30. I'm sorry that I wasn't on time today. I was scheduled, I did. I posted on Facebook about this. I was doing a political 101 local politics talk with my local Democratic club, Down Independent Democrats, which started at 7:30. And then we were talking until 9:30. Now, we did have somebody talk before me, but that's sort of the deal. In any event, wasn't going to leave everybody hanging, so here I am. I don't know if I'm on the internet here. Whatever. The point is that I didn't forget about you all. I definitely remembered, and I saw as we were going past 9 o'clock that I was like, oh no. I had told everybody I would skip the weekend and then come back on Monday, and they're going to think that I defected on them. But it's not the case. I'm a man of my word. Unfortunately, the thing that I had previously committed to really went a lot longer than I thought it was going, like an hour and a half. And here we are. Dorian Key, hey, is this thing at 9 or 9:30? I might end up to be an organizer until November for North Carolina. This is at 9. I was just explaining that the reason we're doing it at 9:30 today is because the thing that I had committed to previously, which started at 7:30, where I was actually presenting, I was doing my real politics talk. It went really long, as they are wont to do, actually, but like 7:30. But so that's why it's 9:30 now. In any event, I'll be back tomorrow at 9, and that should be good fun. You'll lose viewers when you don't have a consistent schedule. Yes, well, I will be consistent from here on out. I will also post up next time. I'm doing a series of free for Downtown Independent Democrats, and then and so I will post up when those are happening so that people know. And I'll also try not to let the next one go over. What happened was the person who was before me in the meeting went longer than expected, at least longer than I expected, and then pushed everything back. That being said, we'll just pick it up again tomorrow because, again, it's late. I think you're right. Folks aren't tuning in because they don't know to look for it. So tomorrow, 9 p.m., we'll do it. And then I got to get a haircut at some point. Jeez. And then, yeah, that's the deal. Sorry, everybody. It's my mistake. Saks Fifth Avenue went bankrupt. Sorry. Oh, man. All right. So because we're off schedule and folks aren't tuning in, we'll call it for tonight. I just wanted to check in and let people know that I am alive. And we'll pick it up tomorrow. Oh, shnikes. We just jumped to 4 people, which is still far below where we normally are. But hey, everybody. Anywho, what the heck? What about the news? Well, we'll just pick up the news. Okay, 5 people. All right. People are tuning in, much to 6 people. Okay, people are tuning in at a pretty steady clip now, much to my surprise. So I just want to then reiterate briefly for the folks who are tuning in now. I'm late because I was doing a talk on local government and local politics for my Democratic club. Fine, let's do a little news. I think the big news of the day, I don't know if it's the big news of the day, but it's news that I find most amusing. The big news is that New York State will now be stopping people who fly into New York from COVID-heavy states. And if you come from a hotspot, they'll be basically issuing you passport controls. You know how you get that piece of paper if you fly out of the country, demanding to know why you're traveling here and where you're going, and your passport number? Well, there's no ID requirements for this one because I think that might become unconstitutional. We don't ask for your papers here in the United States if you're an American citizen, moving between the states, free trade zone and all that. But we will be asking everybody who flies in where they're going, what their business is, and asking them, really demanding that they voluntarily self-quarantine. If you leave the airport without filling out one of these forms, you will be subject to a $2,000 fine, possible summons, and then possible mandatory 2-week quarantining. So it's no joke. And this is all because New York is taking the coronavirus very seriously, as coronavirus obviously starts to cascade out of control in other states. Whereas, meanwhile, in New York City, how many coronavirus deaths did we have yesterday? 0. Nobody died of coronavirus for the first time since the pandemic began. And we are looking now to bring the cases of coronavirus down to 0 as well. So honestly, people get on Andrew Cuomo's case for killing a bunch of people in not homeless shelters, but in old folks' homes and what have you, nursing homes. And one would wish, of course, that the pandemic had less of an impact. But New York City is on track to really reopen and have a state of affairs in which nobody's dying of the coronavirus and very few people are catching it, if any at all. Of course, this could all be blown up by, as New Yorkers did when coronavirus hit New York and folks fled to other states, it could be undone by folks in other states fleeing here to the relative apparent safety of New York and other states failing to do what they need to do to control the virus. That being said, if it weren't for the fact that the rest of the United States was going absolutely freaking bonkers, we could basically reopen right now. Nobody's dying. Transmission rates are going down. New York is now in phase 3. The rest of New York State outside of the cities in phase 4. People have indoor dining. Like, things could really start getting back to normal. And could you only imagine if the entire country had done this from the outset and the entire country were now able to get back to work? The huge economic catastrophe that is just breathing down our necks from a quarter of people not being able to pay rent, from people fleeing the city, from folks not having income. There's a huge disaster that is still on the horizon, and we have not yet begun to feel it. We have not yet begun to feel, all the stocks are going up, but what's going to buoy stocks when there are no consumers? The late night 8:30 live with Ben Yee at 9 o'clock-ish. Yeah, that is what I titled it on Facebook. I mean, on YouTube this time. But, yeah, sorry I was late, Mike. It's because as I said, I was giving a talk on politics for like 50 some odd people on a call that I had been booked for, like scheduled for. It started at 7:30, but now it's 9:30. Do you think Trump is going to fire Fauci for his insolence? No, I don't actually think that's going to happen. I think he'd have a really, really hard time doing that politically, even for Trump. Do you think Dr. Fauci is lacking loyalty to the president? Yeah, I don't think he's loyal to the president at all. I think he's loyal to the people of the United States. I think he's loyal to science. Did you hear the borders are closed until September now? What borders? Like, nobody's letting Americans in until we get this thing under control. So they're closed until September. Like, they're closed until we get this thing under control. They're just going to keep extending it. Nobody wants to be America right now. Michael Kaplan, I saw a meme that read, Biden 2020 today. I just got that. I had to read it out loud to get it. And then I had to say it to myself, Biden. And I got it. It's good. Thanks, Mike. What do you think of Tucker Carlson questioning Tammy Duckworth's loyalty and patriotism to the country? Were you a fan of him when he used to do CNN Crossfire? I thought Crossfire was stupid. Also, I didn't care about politics when Crossfire existed. I was not only too young, but also thought it was just dumb. But that being said, I didn't think that Jon Stewart's epic takedown of Crossfire was like as great as everybody seemed to think it was. Jon Stewart went on and basically said, you're the news. You have to be less contentious or like less, like you have to stop ginning up the partisan divide. And they were like, what about you? And he was like, I'm not the news, which is not true. Just because you're not on a news channel doesn't mean you're not the news. A lot of people got their news from Jon Stewart, and I thought he was sort of like hypocritical and disingenuous, critiquing Tucker Carlson and whatever the other dude's name was on Crossfire at that point. However, he was right about Crossfire. I just think that his lashing out at them was disingenuous given what he was trying to turn The Daily Show into. and did, successfully turn it into. As for Carl Tucker questioning Tammy Duckworth, Tammy said it best. Walk a mile in her legs and tell her she's unpatriotic. Like, she went to war for the country, lost her legs, got elected to Congress, and Tucker just rants on TV. Like, it's not even a comparison. He literally has no legitimacy to question anybody's patriotism, nor to dole out accolades for service to the nation. Should New York State hire Fauci? Why? He should continue to do his job at the federal level. What's all this stuff about Fauci leaving the feds? Michael Kaplan, I don't mind that you are late. This is a fun service you provide for our benefit. Just having a little fun. Oh, thank you. Dorian comes across much differently. Anyway, okay, so now we're at the end of the comments. By the way, just so that folks know, because of the shutdown of the economy, not just the state, but the entire economy, the Federal Reserve, in case you haven't heard, has had trouble with the circulation of coins because people aren't going out and spending cash. First, you have the shutdown of the economy, and then you have the fact that people don't want to exchange things with their hands. So, coins have evaporated from the national ecosystem, and Kroger. I think this is fantastic. Kroger is now going to stop doing change. They're going to let you round up, which I think is bullshit. They should round down. They're the corporation, or they're going to let you put it on a customer card, a loyalty card, so that you can come back with your change. And look, more cards. Change is terrible. Change is heavy. It jingles around. It takes up space in your pocket. It makes you want to carry another bag. I mean, this is why women have purses. And honestly, I've envied them forever because I don't want to put change in my pocket. So, I think there are two great advances in civilization that are coming from the pandemic. Three, really. One, we've all stopped shaking hands and hugging each other, which was just gross and uncomfortable anyway. Just elbows okay, fist bump, bow. Let's stick with that when this is over. Everything else is just why? And then two, drinking outside. Oh, fantastic. I was on the street yesterday, Sunday night. St. Mark's was alive. It was lit. It was alive with activity. People dining on the street. Three, where apparently we're getting rid of change. And change is useless. I hate it. Weighs down your pants, jingles. If we get rid of change, if these are the things that came out of the pandemic, that would be fantastic. And also, fewer cars. What enables us to have really great street life now is that there's just, no cars. There's so many fewer cars that they're not taking up the entire road for themselves. And that is just, I think, it's a nice way to live. And again, I was on St. Mark's last night. I did go out at 2 in the morning, 2:30 on Saturday, and it was dead. I was really depressed. I was like, wow, New York City is dead. But then I was out on Sunday at, what time was it? 7 p.m. And I was like, wow, this is more alive than I usually see New York on a Sunday. And so, I think the economy is changing. I don't know. I think there'll be a point at which activity really does come back, but in a different way. There's been a talk about eventually having all currency be electronic eventually anyway. Yeah, I'm not all about this all electronic currency because of how it can be tracked. I like the anonymity of cash, but I hate the hassle of coins. Just so dumb. One of the big hassles of living in England for a year was they were really into coins, £1 notes. 1 pound coins were heavy. They were this thick, bro. They're heavy. And then 2 pound coins, get out of here. They were pretty, but just, what the deuce, people? They're so heavy, and then they just literally weigh down your pants. So, if you're not carrying a purse or something. So I'm all about paper bills, man. Have you seen the new Freedom House report on the pluralistic open democracies? U.S. fell below Italy for the first ever. So insulting. Italy's such trash. Didn't NYC ban card-only places? It did ban card-only places. What it didn't ban was no coins. You can still, as cash. And there's a lot of reasons that electronic, there's the anonymous component, which I think is for civil libertarians like myself an important piece of it. But there is just the digital divide and the banking divide that makes cash important for people who don't have access to banking services, who don't have good credit, you can't get a credit card. There's a lot of reasons that cash is important. Another thing I wanted to mention in the news, they're making a pill to fight loneliness. So if you're lonely, now you can just be a robot. So great. No need to have friends. No need to worry about not having friends anymore. This time last year, I saw a Facebook post from my memories. This time last year, not last year, this time, holy shit, 10 years ago, this time 10 years ago, it was a Friday, and I was preparing for karaoke, which I used to do every Friday night at Planet Rose. And now I don't do karaoke, and my favorite bar, Planet Rose, is not open. But when it's open again, we're going to do karaoke. It's going to be amazing. Oh, speaking of things which are closed, please, Lord, don't let Planet Rose close forever, as Odessa Diner has just done. Odessa Diner and Yoga to the People, two institutions of the East Village, closed permanently. I went to Yoga to the People almost every day for years. I do Yoga to the People podcasts, which are now not online anymore because they've shut down their website almost every day since the pandemic started. It is such a tremendous loss. And when this is all over, I might have to open my own Yoga to the People, because having done well over 2,000 Yoga to the People classes, I know the sequence pretty well. I'm not a certified teacher now. I wish I had done the teacher training, but I'm Yoga to the People, man, it's so important. It's such an amazing resource. Odessa Diner, though, also said yesterday that it was closing its doors for good. It's just, we are in a crisis. The government really needs to do something to alleviate the rent burden and the burden on small businesses. And they're just not doing it. They're just not making those funds available. And the feds, I don't know what the federal government thinks is going to happen, but they are so bad at this. Yoga to the People was a donation-based yoga studio that was in that was in business since 2008. I went basically a year and a half after it opened. I started going, but it was donation-based yoga. What are your karaoke songs? Secret Agent Man is my go-to. Are we singing a duet? Because if we're doing a duet, a little Respect by Erasure. I'm really good at singing on, folks. I can belt out a mean, it's all coming back to me. That's my secret power ballad. Michael Kaplan, there was an editorial roadway about how remote learning has, do you mean the other day? About how remote learning has created another obstacle to education for the poor who can't afford computers and internet. Yeah, listen, this city and this country requires free, hyper-fast broadband like Korea, okay? The internet is no longer a luxury. It is a public utility. It is an essential, particularly during the pandemic. Now, I've been looking to set up NYC Mesh where I live, which is how to describe this? It's a community-based internet service where a couple of activists have gotten access to, purchased direct access pipeline, which then they beam out free internet from. And I want to set up a hub at my home. You need to have roof access so you can get the beam, but they have fiber optic speeds beamed all over the city, and you can just get internet from them. They ask for $20 a month or a pay-as-you-go sort of scale. We really need to make this available. Now, we have the Link NYCs, which I think are great, but we really need to expand public broadband access and access to devices so that we can close that digital divide, especially, as you mentioned, given the learning environment. I can't believe Odessa closed. You know why? I don't know for a fact, but I just suspect it has to do with reduced business. Ruth Mullen, you are slighting Gem Spa. Sorry, Ruth. Gem Spa is, I've never been there. Actually, I've only ever done Yoga to the People. Is Gem Spa donation based? Because I swore by Yoga to the People. I got into yoga. I hurt myself very badly when I was 18. I'm actually still working through it. I'm happy to say I've made a lot of progress doing a lot of yoga during the pandemic, really working with myself. But I had this injury. I couldn't do anything. I could not even really walk, honestly. And as I started to try and recover, I went and did Tai Chi because it was I figured it'd be the easiest thing. I needed to do something physical. And I liked martial arts, and Tai Chi was the lowest impact thing that I could do. And then as I started to get better over the course of a couple of years, and I regained the ability, I thought I regained the ability to walk properly, but I actually didn't, which led to a lot of other problems down the line, which again, 10 years of, no, more than 10 years. What is it now? 15 years of just working through this injury. I started to do yoga, but I didn't know if I would like yoga or if I could do yoga. So I started doing yoga to the people because I wanted to do donation based. I just want to try it out. I got totally hooked. I started doing their workshops, which, those aren't cheap, but I did a workshop where they taught. It was basically a teacher training one-off, like the first session of teacher training. And I did a whole basic mechanics of yoga. And I was hooked, and I just started going like every day for 10 years. I mean, there were weeks, months at a time when I would just go 7 days a week. And then for most of the last 10 years, I probably averaged, the last year was not so great. But up until definitely until 2017 or 18, I was averaging maybe 5 trips to yoga to the people a day. I mean, a week. Anyway, maybe I'll have to check out Gem Spa after this is over because I now no longer have a place. Dorian does not like Gem Spa because it looks ghetto. And I think Dorian has a real problem with like things that are urban. Honestly, Dorian, what do you just? I don't know what you're looking for in a place. Dorian Key, do you think Mitt Romney will be a Republican hero after Trump falls from power? Most Trumpian Republicans dislike him right now for not being loyal. Hard to say with the Republicans. Republicans always rally around whoever is the most likely to win an election. That's what's effective about them. If you're a Republican and you have power, they're just there to perpetuate that. What will our party look like after Mitch McConnell and Trump both fall? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. People thought the Republican Party was going to collapse after Bush. And the young people in that party, Paul Ryan, a couple of other folks, put together a plan. And it worked. John Boehner, who wasn't young, but, that's a really good question. And I think it's going to look like Dan what's-his-name with the eye patch and maybe a little bit of Justin Amash. Do you think TikTok is vulnerable to Chinese government pressure? Yes. What do you think of the new bill passed by New York State on evictions that Cuomo signed? That bars evictions? Thumbs up. Yeah, for the duration of the pandemic. Yeah, we need it. Ultimately, we need rent relief. We need rent relief because people will still be evicted after the fact after it's over. But, we would have a epic homelessness if a quarter of New Yorkers couldn't pay rent last month. A quarter. That number is going to go up, particularly now that the pandemic unemployment insurance has evaporated and you don't get the extra $600. Homelessness is a tremendous threat for many reasons. It degrades everything about the city. It makes the city more dangerous. It's a drag on the economy. Having people in homes is just such an important factor in political and societal stability. So it is critical that we prevent a massive wave of evictions. Aren't landlords screwed? The answer is whether or not landlords have been governing their properties well. You make so much money as a landlord. If you have not been saving money for a rainy day, if you don't have a fund of at least $100,000, I have zero sympathy for you. Like none. Most of these landlords are millionaires anyway, right? Some of them are over leveraged. That's on them, man. Now it's like there's no, like, mortgages are also not collecting. Defaults are probably going to be low for a bunch of reasons, like, or not defaults, but like seizures of property. So, the whole thing's in stasis. I don't think landlords are that screwed. Some of them rely on their rents for income, which is fine. Like, it's a business. But again, if you're a landlord and you don't have any sort of cushion, I think you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Owning capital, that's all I can, like, I could go into it more, I suppose, but can't landlords argue that the state is stealing from them? No, because they haven't said that rents are canceled. Rents are still due. You just can't evict. But eventually that will cease to be the case, and landlords can come for their money. But even then, I think there's an argument that the government could cancel rents. I have to think about that. But at the very least, I think we've said it before, the government should pay rents for a certain size landlord, I think. Some certainly should be able to, like, we should expect them to be able to weather the crisis. It's just ridiculous that they wouldn't be able to. But I don't think landlords are categorically screwed just because they can't evict people. And it would be a bigger screwing of more people and society at large to evict everybody and put them on the street. Ooh, my brother. Oh, wait, hold on. Michael Kaplan, how did we have trillions to spend on publicly traded huge businesses, but almost nothing to create an effective, large enough testing program? Dude, that's a month and a half ago question about the first stimulus, or 2 months ago question. And it's trash, and we had entire episodes on it. Ben, someone asked me, why can't the state or federal government provide rent relief to the residents and mortgage relief to the landlords, and then allow the banks to absorb the impact from lack of mortgage payments, because we know they can be bailed out? What are your thoughts? Who in the housing chain would best absorb the impact? That's a great question. Very insightful and incisive from my brother. And the answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is there is no reason the government cannot do it. The government simply chooses not to do it. In fact, there are bills right now to cancel rent beyond stopping evictions, actually forgiving rent in the New York State legislature. Now, insofar as who can best absorb losses, I think that canceling mortgages or letting the banks absorb the losses is certainly something that would help with landlords, but not all landlords are in dire straits because they have mortgages. Some of them are folks who are incapable of making ends meet because they rely on property for income, or they are over leveraged on other aspects of their portfolio, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be I guess those are mortgages technically. They're over leveraged. Well, they might just have personal debt that they've taken out to fund other aspects of their life. And they're just over leveraged, and they rely on that income to pay down that debt. And it's not necessarily apparent that forgiving mortgages would solve the problem for landlords. That being said, the renters are the least able to absorb financial difficulty. And it is the highest impact on society to do nothing about their plight, because a bunch of homeless people destabilizes many, many things. Families, economies, neighborhoods. Just imagine if 25% of New York were suddenly living on the street. It would be a disaster. And it would be very difficult for them to recover from that as well. So then we move one up the chain, landlords. Now, there's many different types of landlords, and I think there's an argument to be made that forgiving the mortgages would do a really good thing. But ultimately what you need is for landlords to have to demonstrate at the end of the day their need, because it's, I think, impossible really to bail out all landlords in the country. To pay everybody's rent for a month or 2 months is wildly, wildly expensive. It was already the biggest bailout we've ever had in the history of this country to give everybody $1,200. And I think if you averaged rents across the country, you would get an average rent less than $1,200. Particularly given that New York real estate is just so, my rent is more than $1,200. So I did not get bailed out as a renter by the biggest stimulus package in history. That being said, there were trillions of dollars. The bailout, the stimulus check was only about half of the bailout. So maybe we all could have had $2,400. That actually would have covered my rent. So the federal government is capable of bailing out renters. Now the question is, should landlords all get their money? Like, why is it that other segments of the economy take a hit and landlords don't? And so now we arrive again at the question of whether or not landlords should have to demonstrate that they're in need to get their money. And what really is the basis for that need? Because if it's just, I need I need that income to survive, then that should be taken care of by a stimulus check, right? In some regards, what should happen is the federal government should issue a stimulus amount to everybody and cancel effectively all rents and payments, including mortgages. That way everybody's put in stasis, but they have money to survive. And that's really what we want to do to get through the pandemic. Once the economy opens, once people have jobs, we can go back to the way it was where people paid rent or not. Like, the idea of rent is kind of, whatever. I have ideas on how great of an industry and how valuable an industry real estate is. Certainly, you need to upkeep buildings, and you want to build more buildings, and you want to have the incentive for the creation of new properties for a growing population. So in some ways, the market is capable or creates a set of incentives that encourages that. But in other ways, the market for housing is fucking terrible. But I suppose the real answer to your question is, we don't want to end up bailing out banks. We don't want to bail out landlords. At the end of the day, we want to bail out the people of the United States. Everybody should be able to get through this pandemic because they have enough money. And that means that if we cancel rents and we cancel mortgages and everybody just has the money they need to survive, that is the best way to address the problem. And it's a huge undertaking, and it requires the federal government. It's not something a state can do, unfortunately, because of their balanced budget requirements. But that's a really good question. Even then, I'm not happy with my answer because it can be so complex, and I want to think about it. But ultimately, I think that most of what I said comprises the bulk of an answer. Dorian Key, traditional, for most of history, government existed to enforce, protect the landowning class. Yes, but also for most of history, land was the only productive facet of human endeavor. There were no machines, there was no software. It was all about food production. So it was to protect and stabilize the food production economy. Many landlords are middle class and are responsible for property tax payments and maintenance upkeep. I mean, yeah, right? Like, we should freeze that sector of the economy by not requiring mortgages, giving people stimulus checks, which they can decide how they want to spend that, and then not requiring property tax, right? Which is a tremendous, tremendous hit to local governments. But again, the only way to get around it is support from the federal government. And the states asked at the beginning for $50 billion or $75 billion in state aid, and the federal government, the Republicans. I shouldn't say the federal government because the Democrats were down to do all this. The Republicans said, F you states. So, the real estate tax, it's complex because of how deeply reliant everybody is on real estate taxes in the United States. But the federal government is the institution which is capable of resolving these problems in the short term. You can't do it forever, but in the short term. But they chose to bail out cruise lines. They chose to bail out the airline industry. They chose to bail out trucking. Mind you, all the jobs that would have been lost, you could have frozen all of that just by, one, you could have put more money towards making it safe to do those activities with PPE, sanitation. We've been over this in lives. We've been over this in many, many lives. And then you could have just given everybody their stimulus check, so it doesn't matter whether they went to work that month, right? I mean, it matters for the economy maybe at large, but we had bigger fish to fry. So for that month, it would have made a lot of sense if you just gave people that stimulus check and maybe another one. Yeah. Okay, but if someone moves out, can landlords still go after the ex-tenant for unpaid rent? What court does that fall under? Landlord-tenant court. There's housing court. Isn't eviction the main instrument for landlords? Are they allowed to pursue ex-tenants across state borders? Yes. Well, it's not them. It's, the police. You broke a contract. You can go after people. Yes. The answer is yes. Michael Kaplan, is my question about testing any less relevant now with things worse than ever in most parts of the country? Testing is, they should have done it before, but no, testing is important now. Depends how you look at it. For a place like New York, testing is important. For a place where nobody cares whether they're positive or not, what's the point? We want the testing to happen, but ultimately the point of testing is to keep people from spreading the virus. And if you can't change their behavior one way or the other, what are you going to do? Dorian King, in the Middle Ages, if you didn't pay rent, the feudal lord could put you on the rack. Yeah, that was a bad system, Dorian. Federal government is most able to absorb sudden large costs. Will there be another stimulus check, do you think? Honestly, if the Republicans are seriously not going to give $600 to people on unemployment insurance, I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt that it'll get through the Senate. Dorian, it's absolutely unbelievable to think because people are going to suffer like crazy. But I honestly don't know at this point. I honestly don't know. Dorian, do you think the world should send China a bill for coronavirus wrecking the world's economy? China didn't do it, and it would get you nowhere. So what is the point? No, the answer is no. Should Africa send Europe a bill for depriving it of all the resources that it extracted during imperialism? Should Native Americans send the U.S. a bill for rent for the land that we've been occupying? That's not how things work. It's simply not how things work. Dorian. Okay, back to the landlord pursuing tenants. I have a friend that had to walk out on $8,000 in rent and left because she lost her job and her roommate bailed. She has already left and went back to parents. Seymour, what can she expect in the future? Will landlords sue her? Depends who the landlords are, but they'll likely try to collect on that at some point, if they haven't already, because she's already left. Actually, the best they could hope for is that she voluntarily left so they can try to fill the unit with a paying tenant. Good luck on that. Really, good luck to the landlords. Nobody wants anybody to suffer. It'd be great if the economy worked. But they will probably try to come and collect on that eventually, yes. And there's collection agencies and all sorts of things. She ultimately violated her lease, which is a contract. In India, there is a county that forces people who violate mandates for coronavirus to volunteer in a hospital for a few days, with PPE, of course. I've debated whether this would be helpful for the part on the country that has its head in the sand. That would be super interesting. But as you can probably imagine, Americans don't think that the government can force people to do anything, let alone make them volunteer. I think could do it. You'd have to pass a law, and I think that would be really interesting. I also think that, there's the coronavirus, so you can get coronavirus testing for free. If you get the coronavirus, your trip to the doctor's office is theoretically covered by the federal government. I think people who don't abide by coronavirus measures, maybe they just shouldn't maybe they should be like, I waive any government support for my healthcare fees and I waive my insurance. Because it's just ridiculous at this point if you're going to put yourself and that many other people at risk. But I like that, making them go to hospitals, see for themselves up close in person. It's a very interesting idea. Maybe we should introduce that in New York. But the problem is that the United States is a very large country. Well, I mean, India is bigger, not geographically, but the Indians just have very interesting ways of dealing with punishment that I think a lot of the world could learn from. But Indians also listen to there was a police officer, there was a video of a police officer who found people who weren't masks and made them do squats and push-ups. Super interesting. But I wonder if a police officer could make somebody do that here in the United States. Yeah, let's do one. But thank you for pointing that out, bro. Let's do one section of the Magna, and then I'm going to go eat because it's, oh my God, it's after 10. Oh, because I started late. All right. By the way, my friend read an article that Texas Medical Center is now completely full. Yes, all of their ICU units. They are the largest medical center in our entire country, I think, with thousands of beds. Our neighbors down south are screwed, sadly. Wow. You heard it here first, folks. That sucks. I did know that Texas was out of ICU beds at its largest hospital. I didn't realize that it's now completely full, nor that it's actually one of the largest hospitals in the country. But I guess that makes sense because it's Texas, which is big. Sad. It's very sad what's happening. And we can lay it all at the feet of our highest leaders. Oh well, 43. If a man holds lands of any escheat, such as the, quote, honor, end quote, of Wallingford, Nottingham, Boulogne, Lancaster, or of other escheats in our hand that are baronies, at his death, his heir shall give us only the, quote, relief, end quote, and service that he would have made to the baron, had the barony been in the baron's hands. We will hold the escheat in the same manner as the baron held it. I have no idea what this means. Zero idea. And honestly, I'm too hungry to look it up. I'm gonna go now because I'm starving. It's past 10. I forgot that I started this at late. Anyway, let's read these. Ruth Mullen. The Spanish flu actually originated in the United States, Dorian. Luckily, the rest of the world didn't send us a bill. And I'm sure we wouldn't have paid it even if they had. But that's interesting. Thanks, Ruth. I did not know that. Michael Yee. New York City never ended up utilizing its ventilator allocation policies. That may change for the rest of the country. Yeah, people thought that coronavirus was a joke because NYC didn't have a bunch of deaths and it wasn't, we didn't use the field hospitals and such. NYC, we managed to get it under control. And people were like, oh, coronavirus ain't no thing. We're going to see in these other places whether Italy was a reality or Italy was a hoax. And I'm sorry to say that it's looking like it's going to shape up to be a reality. Anyway, on that happy note, I'm taking off, and I will see you all tomorrow at 9 p.m. Thank you so much for checking in, even though I was late.